Your Honour, just prior to resuming the examination of Mr. Spinks, if I might take the opportunity to say something about Mr. Geoffrey Jackson, who's a member of the governing body and who's currently in Australia.
That's the governing body in New York.
That's right. So some weeks ago it came to the attention of the Royal Commission that Mr. Jackson, a member of the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses in New York, was in Australia. We wrote to the lawyers acting for the Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia and asked if their client would procure a statement from Mr. Jackson and make him available as a witness. The reply that was received was that Mr. Jackson was in Australia for private, compassionate reasons, and also that since the governing body was not involved in the implementation and administration of policies and procedures in relation to child sexual abuse, he would not be able to give relevant evidence. The Royal Commission then left the matter at that point, but subsequently came to the view that Mr. Jackson's evidence would likely be useful for this hearing, particularly in relation to the formulation of policies and procedures by the governing body and the possibility for change of policies and procedures in the future. We therefore wrote last week asking whether the lawyers for the Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia would accept service of a summons on Mr. Jackson. The reply that was received reiterated that for reasons of compassion related to why Mr. Jackson was in the country, it would, as it was put, be unconscionable for him to be required to prepare to give evidence and to give evidence. Taking that into account, Mr. Jackson has not been summoned to give evidence. We would, however, welcome evidence from him or another member of the governing body, particularly with regard to the setting of policies and procedures and the possibilities for change of those policies and procedures. And the door is open for the Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia or the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia to present such evidence for this hearing, including by video conference.
Gentlemen, I don't know which of you two should respond to that, but can I make it plain that, if it's not plain already, that the Commissioner and I have concern about the process of investigation and determination of allegations within the Jehovah's Witness, and whether it's a safe and effective process for the determination of an allegation by a person that they have been sexually abused by someone within the church. Now, I understand the theocratic foundation for the present position, at least I think I do, but at the moment we do not have a witness, as I understand it, who can tell us what the way forward might be to enable the church to bring its processes into to bring its processes to the point where, rather than run the risk of increasing the trauma on those who have been abused, the processes can assist in alleviating the trauma. It is of fundamental importance to people who have been abused that when they go to the relevant authorities, and in this case it is the church, because the church demands a complaint be brought to the church, but it's of fundamental importance to people who are abused that when they go to the relevant authority, their story is accepted and they have the opportunity to tell the whole of their story to a forum which they can have trust in and which will enable them then to pass, as it were, some of the burden to that institution which requires, in this case, that it report, or that person report. Now, these are very significant issues. They're not small issues, they're significant issues. And at the moment we're, as I say, facing a situation where we can see a problem, but we do need assistance from the church in what is the solution. And we rather thought that Mr. Jackson might be able to assist us in that respect. I understand the reason for compassion being extended to him. I have no difficulty with that. And for that reason I have not issued a summons requiring him to attend. But at the moment we face a serious issue which only the Church can help us with. Now, whether that needs a response now, I don't know, but we would like you to reflect upon that situation. Yes, Mr. Stewart.
Your Honour, may I respond on behalf of the persons I represent? What Your Honour's points are being taken on board, are being addressed, and are being given the most earnest consideration by the authorities. Mr. Jackson would probably not have been of any assistance in any event, because his role and his responsibility is in relation to the translation of matters. It's not in relation to these sorts of matters. However, Mr. O'Brien, who will give evidence before Your Honour, is able to assist Your Honour in regard to some of the matters Your Honour has raised. And I can assure Your Honour that to the extent to which Mr. O'Brien is unable to assist Your Honour, we will do everything that we can to ensure that the Commission is given the assistance that is required from us and to help the Commission.
The assumption I make at the moment is that if there is to be change, it's change that has to be ultimately sanctioned, if not directed by New York. Am I right?
Your Honour, ultimately it's a matter for submission. We understand Your Honour's points, and we understand Your Honour's particular concern about the environment in which these matters are reported. So that's not been lost upon us at all. The question, I think, at the end of the day is the adaptability of the present structure to these individual circumstances of any particular person, and whether that present structure is inappropriate, so it must be done away with, or whether the appropriate structure can be modelled for the purposes of an individual person's case. And that's really, I think, probably one of the most difficult questions that the Commission will have to deal with at the end of the day.
It is, but if there is to be change, again, I'd assumed that change has to be either directed or sanctioned in New York.
Well, Your Honour, it may be the case. It depends upon what change is contemplated. My instructions are, my understanding is that the local branch has significant flexibility in adapting the judicial committee procedure to the individual case. As Your Honour, I think, has heard and will hear, the Elders' Handbook is for elders worldwide, but the autonomy of the branches enables the branches to tailor these matters for individual cases, and that's part of what Mr. Spinks's evidence is about today. So that it may be that...
Well, I'm still at a loss, because, as I understand it, the ultimate framework comes from New York.
No, Your Honour, the ultimate framework comes from the Scriptures, in the sense...
All right, yeah. But that as interpreted by New York.
Perhaps as interpreted, but also, we would say, as set down in the Scriptures, so that the structure may not be changeable. But
well, you see, that's a serious issue. And if the way the Scriptures are being interpreted and applied is creating additional trauma for people who are sexually abused by members of the Church, that's a serious problem.
Understood, Your Honour. I think that, again, ultimately it's a matter for submissions. I think our submission at the end of the day will be that the structure itself doesn't create or exacerbate the trauma that has been suffered. What is required is for the structure to be adapted to the individual person, so as to ensure...
Well, that may be your submission, but I should put you on notice that that's not a submission which at the moment I think is going to deal with the problem we have.
Understood, Your Honour. And that's why, perhaps at the end of all of the witnesses that are to come, if I can put it this way, that Your Honour's concerns will be hopefully addressed, but certainly to the extent to which they're not, I can assure Your Honour that the Jehovah's Witnesses will cooperate in addressing such matters.
Let me, I suppose, illustrate it in a direct way.
Yes, Your Honour.
We've now conducted more than 3,800 private sessions as part of the Royal Commission's work.
Yes, Your Honour.
Which are people who have been abused coming and telling us their story with the expectation that their story will be accepted. We have a variety of requests from people as to the commissioner person who actually receives their story. And there are some who will say, I only want to talk to a woman.
Yes, Your Honour.
There are others who will say, I only want to talk to a man.
Yes, Your Honour.
One needs to be able to say, if you're in the process of receiving these sorts of allegations, one needs to be able to say that we can meet a request like that in order not to impose trauma on the person when they come to tell their story.
Understood, Your Honour. I mean, Your Honour, the very point Your Honour makes is to a certain extent covered in the Elders' Handbook, to a certain extent. I don't say completely, but to a certain extent in paragraph 24 of the Elders' Handbook, where a sister within the faith may go to another sister within the faith to disclose matters.
Yes, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the process, and I think you know I'm talking about the whole process. And there's a second step in this, and that is the need to have the survivor confront the abuser.
Yes, Your Honour.
Now, all of our learning in the civil courts tells us that that process is likely to create, for some people, extraordinary trauma.
Yes, Your Honour.
And we need to look at that process as well.
Yes, Your Honour. Your Honour, accepting, I do not for one second cavil with Your Honour, accepting that what Your Honour has said, it's our understanding that the more sensitive the response at every step along the way, the less the chance of inflicting or imposing further trauma or exacerbating the situation for the survivor. So that our response is that at every step along the way, it needs to be sensitive to the individual needs of that person, bearing in mind both our understanding of secular rights, that is, the right for the individual to report the matter, and at the same time to respect the individual's desire for scriptural counselling or for the matter to be dealt with within the faith. So those considerations need to be balanced in dealing with the matter.
That doesn't answer the problem we have, because the starting point for the discussion is an adherent is required to report. So it's not a question of seeking to have their allegation determined by the church. The obligation, as we understand it, falls upon them to bring that allegation to the church, and then the church imposes its structure. This is a discussion that we'll need to have further down the track, but I just want to make it plain that these are really significant issues. We had thought that perhaps Mr. Jackson might be able to help us with them, but if he can't,
Your Honour, no.
Then so be it. Now, we had, I've forgotten her name, but the doctor last Friday.
Dr. Applewhite, Your Honour.
Yes. And you realise where her evidence ended up.
Yes, I do, Your Honour, yes.
In terms of the church's processes.
Yes, Your Honour.
Although she came to say that they were good, the ultimate position, as we understand what she said, is they're flawed. And those flaws are the things that I'm talking to you about now.
Yes, I understand, Your Honour. We do understand, Your Honour, and obviously these matters have to be addressed and have to be addressed to assist the Commission. I don't wish to take up more of Your Honour's time now, and I'm conscious of the
Anyway, if Mr. Jackson can't help, and then there we are.
But Mr. O'Brien will be of assistance, Your Honour, and Mr. Spinks will be of assistance, Your Honour. Thank you, Your Honour.
Yes.